I'm gonna do a turn. Hey everybody, welcome. You might be asking yourself, why is there only one chair? Why is David dressed up so much? Why has he still not lost the weight that he keeps saying he's going to lose?
Does this look like a little weight to you?
Well, I'm going to answer about 2 of those questions. I'm dressed up because it's the season finale. There's only one chair, because we're going to look back at every episode we've done so far, and I'm going to choose my favorite moments. Are you ready?
Are you ready?
Let's begin.
Hey!
Let's get down to the dollars and cents. So we talk about kind of the true cost of turnover when you only take into account driver replacement. What we did in the article is we use referral rate as a proxy for your fleet's reputation. Do you think that is a valid proxy?
Yeah, it's definitely one way to look at it.
Our first clip comes from episode 2, the currency of fleet reputation. The idea here was that you can use your referral or rehire rate as a proxy to look at how your reputation is. And since referral and rehire rate has such a profound effect on your actual overall cost per hire, you can take that rate and use it as a way to assign a dollar sign to your reputation. So you would say, the current referral plus rehire rate is around 30% of your total hires. And if you say, if I could get that to 35% of my total hires, then my reputation would be worth this much to me because it's saved this much money over the course of the year. So really interesting topic. One of my favorite one of my favorite moments from this year. Let's look at our next moment.
7!
Lead to hire ratio would be the first one that comes to mind. But even getting more granular, time is money. So how much time is it taking? How many recruiters do you have? Full app to hire ratio. I mean, there's quite a few things that a good partnership. I wouldn't want to put this all on the director of recruiting. They've got so much going on, but a good partner should be able to help them execute that well with 5 or 6 touch points, but 5 or 6 different items to consider.
Our next clip comes from episode 4, Lead to Hire Part Deuce. And this we're talking about if you want to actually drive down your cost per hire, what are the top things you should look at? Aaron makes a very good point here in saying lead to hire is probably the first thing you want to look at, but even lead to hire can be broken down into several different data points by channel, by recruiter, by lead type. And the big point that I want to look at here is he says a good partner is going to help you do this because as a director of recruiting, you're probably not going to have the time to dig into all the data points needed to really get a good 360 view of everything that's happening in your recruiting pipeline.
6!
But I have seen client meetings where, they'll take 7 or 8 of their brand terms and dump it into a keyword, Google keyword tool, and maybe even do the little AI where it builds the ads for them, and then they set it and forget it.
Set it and forget it!
And that's terrible. I mean, that is not ideal. So yes, I've seen people try and not succeed at it. Obviously, you can do it. You can do it well, but there is a lot of complexity to it.
Clip 6 is from episode, too many numbers. Clip 6 is from episode 3. Once again, talking to Aaron Murray here about search. And specifically here, we're talking about branded search. Now, what he's talking about here, the mistakes he sees so many people make is they think branded search, I'm bidding on my own name. That's pretty simple. I'll just throw together a quick list of keywords. I'll have the AI within the platform build the ads for me, and then I'll set it and forget it. And there's so many mistakes that can be made within branded search if you don't know what you're doing, if you're not checking into the campaign, if you're not monitoring it, fairly frequently. As he says, it can be done, but unless you know what you're doing, this is something you really would want to outsource because owning your name in search is extremely important.
5!
for every missed lead, missed call, that driver's getting in a truck somewhere. They're calling to work for you. And if you're busy, I get that. You got to answer the phone. I don't know how many calls I'm on with clients each month. And we're looking at their call reports. And this sizable portion of all the calls produced aren't getting answered.
The reason you're passionate about it is because you're on the phone with so many clients, and when you look into the data, you're seeing lots of unanswered phone calls.
Just purely never answered.
This is from episode 7. We were talking about 9 ways you can hire more drivers that don't cost more money. So this was the one it seemed that Kyle was the most passionate about. It was the idea that so many people have so many missed phone calls. And he, I think, gives actual data points in this episode that you should go back and watch on the YouTube channel or on the blog or the other places. What other places are there?
Those are the main places.
Okay, those are the main places. And he says that, so many people end up missing phone calls, and drivers are rarely looking at one fleet at a time. So when you miss a phone call from a driver, he's probably just calling somebody else or maybe another 3 people. So it's so important in this market, especially, that you are picking up the phone and picking it up quickly. And if you don't have the bandwidth to do that, either invest in technology that allows you to do that, or hire more people to answer the phone, which I know kind of defeats the purpose of not spending more money, but you gotta answer the phone. Tell us a little bit about the 2.5 V's of ad creative.
The 2.5 V's are visual, verbal, and relevancy. There's your 0.5 V.
So let's talk about the first aspect of that, visual, right? The first V was visual. Yes. So tell us what we need to know about the visual aspects of ad creative. Where do we start?
You want to take the time to take some really great pictures, to take some video, and you can send us all of your completely edited videos, or you can send us B-roll footage. We can do so much with all of the little bits and pieces that you can send us. But if you don't provide those to us, we're a little bit lost at sea, right? We're going to be dependent on stock photos. We're going to have to go to your corporate site. So in terms of what you can provide to us, the more the better.
Now, in this episode, we talked about ad creative and what really works. This is kind of a 2-parter clip. I wanted to look at the first part where she's saying the 2.5 V's of ad creative, with it being visual, which is what the person's looking at, verbal, which is the messaging, whether that's the script of your video, the ad copy, and some sort of image, or the heading or whatever that is, that's the messaging, and then the relevancy, which is essentially how relevant is it to your driver. It's really important. You should go back and look at that and see how all those factors play in. But then on the first part, they always say a picture's worth 1,000 words. So it's so important that you are investing in great visual elements for your campaigns, not just stock generic stuff. You want great visual elements, whether that's high-res photos, great video. It's worth the investment, and you want to have as much of it at your disposal that your partner can use within their ads as possible. So important. Ad creative, we talk about this in the episode, how ad creative is just a prime mover of results when it comes to your campaigns and your advertising effectiveness.
3.
What can you tell us about cost per lead and how it correlates with cost per hire?
So our theory was that cost per lead probably wouldn't correlate with cost per hire, even though most people tend to think that it would. Most people think get the most leads at the cheapest cost and you're going to get the lowest cost per hire. Just from our experience working with different sources, just because a source produces cheap leads doesn't necessarily mean those leads are good quality. So we tested this by running a giant correlation study like you see. We had over 600 campaigns across like 6 different months and actually found practically a negligible correlation whatsoever. So
can you do a quick, and if this part gets too dry and nerdy, we'll just edit it out. Can you do a quick explanation of what this number means? Because this, if you're not a data nerd, this may not mean anything.
Yep. So if you were to think of it as a scale of 1 to 10, or in this case, like 0.1 to 0.10, with 10 being something that is there, a relationship is there, 1 being a relationship is not there. Obviously, the closer to 1, the less of a relationship there is. And so a correlation of 0.26 means there's practically not one at all.
Not one at all. All right, this was from our first episode. As you can tell, we don't have a cool set. I was still making the mistake of drinking soda while I did it, and then I would feel something gurgle, and Josh would point it out because he's a jerk.
I know you are, but what am I?
This is a big thing that I think a lot of fleets miss. It's the idea that the reason their cost per hire could be so high is that their leads are too expensive. And this, what we're talking about, we did a study of over 600 fleets over the course of 6 months. And within those fleets, the cost of their leads had practically, like a 0.2 is practically no correlation to their cost per hire. Not one at all. Now you may be saying, but cost per lead has to affect cost per hire because you'd use it in the dadgum equation. Yes, that's true, but you have to think about it within a given market. As the market changes and the cost per lead for everyone goes up, then the cost per hire for everyone would also increase. But within the matrices of a given market, the thing that will actually correlate to people having a lower cost per hire when compared with other fleets is their lead to hire ratio. So the ability to turn a lead into a hire more quickly, or taking less leads to turn to find a hire. So very important there. The thing you should be focusing on if you want to drive down your cost per hire in any market is lead to hire ratio.
It would have the biggest impact, almost threefold of any other stage.
Say that again. So I must say it again. Just improving, if you were to look at all those areas and say, I'm going to improve each of them by 5 base percentage points.
Right.
The impact that the schedule for orientation rate would have outweighs the other ones, any other single category, by threefold.
Correct.
Wow.
Boom.
Well, obvious reason, you can see why this clip ranks so high, all that slick editing. But this is really a huge point. So the background to this a little bit, and you should go, obviously, for all these, go back, watch the full episode. They're all on YouTube and the blog. Seth was trying to figure out, because he had been given the directive that you have to hire more drivers, but you get less budget. So he said, to do that, we have to find more efficiencies in the recruiting pipeline. So he broke down the entire recruiting pipeline, and you have to go back to the episode. I'm not going to go through all the elements of the recruiting pipeline, but he was trying to find, if I can focus on one point within that pipeline to have the biggest effect on how many drivers we're hiring, where should I focus? And he found that the ability of his recruiters to schedule more of the drivers, the qualified drivers that they talk to for orientation, would have threefold of an effect of any other area of the pipeline. Now, obviously, this means that drivers have to be better salespeople, or better at convincing people to drive for their fleet. And that's not an easy task, but I think that's so astounding to realize, like, as a manager or a director, that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck, is improving your recruiter's ability to get drivers interested and scheduled for orientation. Wow. You can't look at historical numbers of cost per hire or cost per lead, because we are in a historical time when it comes to freight volume and the amount of drivers available to move it.
That's right. There's less drivers and freight rates are way up. So there's no incentive for a driver to leave.
And you are, sorry, I'm so aggressively pointing, you are seeing fleets that are missing out on opportunity because they can't get out of that cost mindset, right?
Every day, where they're okay with I'm going to let my budget be limited because this is all I've been allocated, versus let's just take a step back. If you increase your budget for more expensive hires, I'm climbing that fruit tree. At what point is that 10th or 15th or 20th hire that I normally would miss out on? When is that driver profitable?
Right.
And we're finding it's actually not that far down the road, no pun intended.
My favorite moment from season 1, this was a great episode with Kyle, and we were talking about how with the historic times we're in as far as the freight market, that fleets are trying to take, many fleets that we talk to every day are taking an old mindset of maintaining their costs and keeping their costs down into this market. And it doesn't work, because even though you're going to pay more for a driver, you should be willing to, because you're going to recoup those costs based off of freight rates faster than you ever have. And you should do the math, as Kyle says, to understand at what point in a driver's tenure with you is he actually profitable. And you should have the average for your entire fleet. So if the average driver stays a year, know at what point in that year, based off of your current revenue metrics, at what point is that driver profitable. And if you can get that driver into orientation or into a truck for an amount that still makes you profitable within that given time, then really you should have no problem doing it. Because it's like trading $5,000 to make $10,000. It's simple math. And you really, especially in this market, need to do the math to find what we would call the average lifetime value of each driver to know what you should actually be spending on driver recruiting. And that's it for season 1 of Digging Deeper. Thanks for joining us as we take a look back at all 8 episodes in this season finale. If you're watching this live, then stick around for the Q&A. If not, next episode of Digging Deeper, make sure you join us live so you can participate in the live Q&A. See you in season 2. Season 1 is over. What will happen in season 2? Will David finally lose that weight? Will he get more guests? Who knows? The only way to find out is to join us for season 2. Boom, boom, boom.